Welcome to The Explainer. You know, sometimes the biggest stories hide the wildest contradictions, and today we're diving headfirst into one of those, right in the heart of the story of Queen Esther. It's a fascinating puzzle that all comes down to a single word, but it creates two totally different and conflicting realities. Let's get into it.
Okay, so here's our game plan. We're going to start with this really shocking claim about Esther. Seriously, it'll make you rethink everything. Then, we'll hit the rewind button and go back to the original text. What did the king actually want? From there, we'll zero in on the exact moment this whole mess gets created. It all comes down to one tiny word. And then, the big reveal. How sticking to the simple, plain meaning makes the entire problem just, poof, disappear.
Okay, so let's jump right into the deep end. The first thing you've got to understand is that this massive controversy, it's not even in the original book of Esther. Nope. This comes from way later, from a really dramatic interpretation in the Talmud, which, as you know, is this huge collection of rabbinic discussions on Jewish law.
And this is where things get wild. This passage from the Talmud makes an absolutely jaw-dropping claim. It says that Queen Esther, the heroine of the whole Purim story, was living a double life. She was queen to King Ahasuerus, sure, but at the same time, she was also still the wife of Mordecai. I mean, can you believe that? Living with both men?
Right away, this sets off all kinds of alarm bells. You've got this huge theological and legal problem. According to biblical law, it's strictly forbidden for a man to be with his wife after she's been with another man. So, how in the world could Mordecai, this righteous hero, go along with this? It just doesn't add up. It feels completely impossible.
So, okay, if this later tradition creates this impossible situation, it makes you wonder, what does the original story actually say? Let's go back to the source, to the book of Esther itself, and see what the king's orders were when he started looking for a new queen.
And yep, there it is, crystal clear. The king's decree wasn't just find me a beautiful woman, it was specific. He repeatedly asks for virgins. This one little detail makes that later claim, that Esther was already married, sound not just strange, but like a direct contradiction to the original text.
Okay, so that's the big question, right? If the king explicitly wanted virgins, where on earth did this whole Esther was married idea come from? Well, the answer, and this is the source of the entire conflict, is found in a really, let's say creative, rereading of a single verse.
This slide right here is the fork in the road. This is where one story becomes two. In the original Hebrew, the text says Mordecai took his orphaned cousin, Labat, which is super straightforward. It just means for a daughter. Simple adoption. But the later rabbinic interpretation pulls a fast one. It says, hey, don't read it as Labat, read it as Labite. And Labite, that means for a house, which was a common way of saying he took her as a wife. See what happened there? A tiny change in pronunciation, a huge change in meaning.
So this is it. This is the hinge on which the whole story turns. You've got this incredibly complex, seemingly unsolvable moral problem, and it was completely manufactured just by changing how you read one single word.
And this table just lays it all out perfectly. The original word, levat, means she's his adopted daughter, she's a virgin. She fits the king's decree, no problem. But you change that one word to lebeet, and boom, suddenly she's his wife, she's a married woman. And you've created a situation that completely clashes with the king's command and biblical law.
So what's the takeaway here? It's crucial. The entire moral problem, it's not actually in the story. It was never there. It's completely manufactured by this later choice to tweak how a single word is read. It's like building a whole new story with a brand new problem right on top of the original.
So, after all that, how do we solve this massive puzzle? Well, the solution is almost laughably simple. All you have to do is go back to what the text actually says.
Let's just walk through it. The problem? Esther seems to be with two men. The cause? Someone decided to reread daughter as wife. The contradiction? Well, now you have a married woman being taken in a search for virgins, which makes no sense. So what's the solution? Just read the text as it's written, for a daughter. The second you do that, the whole house of cards collapses. She wasn't married, she was a virgin. There's no problem for Mordecai. The puzzle is gone.
And this really gets us to the big idea, the powerful lesson at the heart of all this. It's about the danger of straying from the plain, simple meaning of a text. Think about it. The moment you change the plain meaning, you've just created a problem out of thin air. And once you invent the problem, you have to invent justifications for it.
And then justifications for those justifications. You start digging what one of our sources calls a hole of lies, working endlessly to explain away a contradiction that you yourself created.
And that really leaves us with something to chew on, doesn't it? The story of Esther is just one powerful example of how layers of interpretation can totally reshape a narrative. So, the next time you pick up any text, ancient or modern, it's worth asking yourself, am I reading the original story, or am I reading the story about the story that came later?